Can you take us through the bookkeeping process for LLCs and what folks starting a business should keep in mind about bookkeeping, maybe tools they should use or just things they should be aware of so that they don't create additional cost in terms of time and energy down the line?
Wow. Okay. So that's a great question. And there's a lot of different things that we can cover within that topic. So the first thing that I'll talk about is just small businesses, right? Because if you say, okay, what's the bookkeeping look like for Apple, right? Apple computers. And what does it look like for a consulting firm that does $20,000 a year that's owned by one person? It's going to be a lot different.
Oh yeah.
So, but if we start with just the solopreneur, right? Somebody who has their own business has an LLC from abroad, that's doing their own work, right? What I always recommend is that it is worth your time, in my opinion, to learn how to use QuickBooks or a tool like QuickBooks and try to do your own books up to a certain point, right? Once you're making millions and millions of dollars, you're not going to be sitting there, grinding away doing your own books. But it is worth it for somebody just starting out to learn how to do it and to become familiar with accounting and the principles in the US. So that is what I would recommend to a very small business owner or maybe somebody who's just getting started. Watch tutorials online. If you know somebody that maybe knows how to use QuickBooks or similar software, ask them to teach you and do it yourself. Now, when it comes to managing your books, I think there's a few pitfalls that I see a lot of people falling into that can make things really complicated. So the number one tip I would give on that front in terms of simplifying, especially for small businesses, is consolidate your accounts. I say that if you have a US bank account, you should use it and maybe use one primary account, especially for a small business, because if you're okay, you want to have a couple different accounts, you want to take advantage of different features of different banks. I mean, that is probably not worth your time for somebody who's making less than $50,000 who's doing it themselves. It's really just going to make your life more complicated than it is going to help you to get the rewards, right? Just focus on one bank, use one for everything. And then it's going to be really easy to reconcile your accounts at the end of the year because you're only going to have one account, right? So that's going to be really simple. And when you hand that to an accountant, they'll say, okay, yeah, this totally makes sense. Whereas when you have, if you have one bank account and then you have Payoneer, you have PayPal, you have TransferWise, you have all these different accounts, none of which sync properly to an accounting software. When you hand it to an accountant at the end of the year, they're going to say, this is a total mess. This is going to take forever, right? And that's the last thing you want. So, if you do have to use TransferWise or Payoneer, I know that people do have to use those things sometimes. Try to only use one and try to use it as infrequently as you can. And it'll make your accountant's life simpler. So, learn how to do it yourself at first. And try to consolidate your accounts, use as few accounts as you can. As you grow, the equation is going to change quite a bit, because you're going to be doing a lot more complicated business. You might need a dedicated bookkeeper. Maybe you even hire an accountant in-house after a certain degree of scale. That can change the equation considerably. Now, if you're a C Corp, that also changes the equation. Or even a multi-member LLC, because that means you're going to need to be reporting a profit and loss to the US government on an annual basis, which means you either need to figure out how to do this or you need to pay somebody to figure out how to manage your books. So if you have one of those entity types, I would highly consider either learning how to do it yourself or getting professional help so that you can report an accurate profit and loss. I don't know if you want to go into expenses management and how to think about what you might pay in taxes as well, but I think that's kind of like how I think about bookkeeping in general.